I'm going to ask President Klerk to make a few introductory comments, and then you will be welcome to put questions to the President.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful to be here in Mérida, to be back at the Nobel Peace Laureate Summit. I've missed the previous one, and it is my hope that the messages emanating from this conference will resound around the world. The world is in a bad place at the moment. Democracy is breaking down, populism is taking over, and there is really reason to be extremely concerned about what is happening in so many parts of the world. So I hope that our deliberations here will lead to millions of people around the world to sit up, to take notice, and to take their hands out of their pockets and to come onto the playing field and to start working for peace. You're welcome to pose your questions. I will put on my earphones. If you want to pose it in Spanish, I'll try my best to follow the translation. Welcome here, and I look forward to interaction with you.
Buenos días, presidente de Klerk. Rafael Gómez Chile, del periódico Por Esto, de aquí de la ciudad de Mérida. Parece...
Can we turn up the volume? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Buenos días, me llamo Rafael Gómez Chi, soy del periódico Por Esto, de aquí de la ciudad de Mérida. Yo quería preguntarle sobre el tema del racismo, que parece que ha vuelto a estar muy de moda. Últimamente hay muchos presidentes, incluso de corte racista. Está Donald Trump en los Estados Unidos, Bolsonaro en Brasil. ¿Cómo ve usted la situación mundial en ese sentido actualmente? ¿Y cómo ve a la sociedad, si hay inacción o le hace falta algo para despertar?
I agree with you that racism is really a big problem. In my own country, we took leave of racism in 1990, between 1990 and 1996, reaching agreement between me and Mr. Mandela and our teams on a new constitution which, in very strong terms, prohibits racism, prohibits discrimination of any kind on the basis of race or color. But racism has been brought back by not our present president, but by one who ruled for 9 years. And racism is again a big problem in South Africa. Everything is defined by race, almost as it was in the apartheid years. But racism is all around the world a big problem. And I fully agree with the statement contained in your question that yes, racism should be put very near to the top of the agenda of all world leaders. We must stop racism, we must fight racism, we must work for good inter-race and inter-ethnic relationships. The biggest problem, one of the three big challenges of this censorship, is how to manage diversity. There are no longer wars between countries. There are wars within countries. Within countries, between racial groups, between ethnic groups, and between religious groups. And that, together with climate change, and together with extreme poverty of still 1/3 of the world's population, are the three big challenges which we face. So racism is a scourge, it must be eradicated, and we must all work against it.
Hello, my name is Ethan from Buenaventure's ABC Radio, and my question is, you think there is a reconciliation, a social reconciliation about what happened at the apartheid, a part of a political reconciliation, a social one? The people are reconciliated with each other, or there's still bad thoughts about racism?
I think reconciliation is part of the solution of many of the problems which we have in many countries and around the world. Once again, South Africa has shown the way, and more particularly, Nelson Mandela has shown the way. After 27 years in jail, he came out with a remarkable lack of bitterness. And his biggest legacy will be his commitment to reconciliation. And I agree with you that it's not only reconciliation at a national level. Reconciliation at a grassroots level is important. We must learn to live, although we are different, we might be different in color, different in race, different in culture, different in language, different in religion, to live peacefully together in the same country, in the same town, in the same village even. So yes, reconciliation is part of the solution of making this world a better place.
Sorry, here in the front.
Buenas tardes, Ronald Rojas de Cadena Raza. Presidente, usted mencionó dos palabras o tres, el peligro de la democracia, de que está en peligro la democracia, corrijo, el populismo y que todavía incluso existe racismo en África. ¿Cree que en ciertas regiones del mundo de África están las condiciones para que vuelva a aparecer un apartheid? Y al hablar de populismo, si mi compañero puso sobre la mesa dos nombres, Donald Trump y Jair Bolsonaro, si cree que ellos son parte de esa amenaza del populismo, o que otros líderes del mundo cree que estaría cayendo en este populismo y estaría colocando en riesgo la democracia en algunos países.
I'm not sure I got your whole question. Let me talk about populism a bit. Populism is sticking its neck out in many countries. I think there's an element of populism taking hold in the United States of America. There's an element of populism taking place in my country. The ruling party in my country, for instance, is divided between the populists and the realists. The realists realizes we need economic growth. We need to attract investments. For that we need to follow well-balanced economic policies. The populists wants to nationalize everything, wants expropriation of land without compensation and all such things. But populism is also taking hold in Europe. If we follow European elections which took place over the past number of years, in quite a number of cases the more populist-orientated leaders were elected into government. So yes, populism is a wide problem. Dave, did I miss out on another part of the question? Thank you.
Sorry, that second row. Yes.
Sí. Acá. ¿Cómo está? Buen día. El señor. Bien. Thank you. Me gustaría preguntarle desde la perspectiva de México, ¿cuál es su opinión respecto a que...
Have a microphone here.
But that gentleman has one now.
Okay.
Yes, carry on.
Okay, thank you very much. Me gustaría preguntarle en términos de, refiriéndonos estrictamente al tema migratorio, desde su perspectiva, ¿qué opinión tiene de que algunos gobiernos, por ejemplo en el caso de México, se oponen a que políticas migratorias como las que quieren, por ejemplo, imponer los Estados Unidos, tengan a otros países, como es el caso de México, la pretensión de que sea lo que se conoce como un tercer país seguro? México ha expresado su opinión de que México no puede ser un tercer país seguro. Entonces yo quisiera preguntarle en ese sentido cuál es su opinión sobre este factor en particular. Muchas gracias.
I think migration is not only a problem, I will come back to Mexico, but it's not only a problem between the USA and Mexico. If we look at what is happening in Europe, with hundreds of thousands of people crossing from Africa into Europe to escape from dangerous situations, to escape from hunger, to escape from joblessness into Europe, and the problems that the European countries have in assimilating these migrants. Migration is a problem around the world, and it's going to become an even bigger problem. In the case of Europe, the population is shrinking, and just to keep the economy at the level where it is, they will have to take migrants. But I have sympathy for any country in the world to say, we can't take everybody who wants to come to the country. We have to have an immigration policy, and we have to put also the interests of our country is also important, and therefore we need migrants with specific skills to fill jobs which are vacant, to fill jobs where we don't have the local labor and so on. So I have sympathy for the fact of an immigration policy. I think Mexico should also have an immigration policy. But that policy should be humane. That policy should have an open mind for the needs and the fears and the real danger of people. Amnesty should be part of that policy. Real fugitives should be accommodated if they are flying and getting away from real dangerous situations. So one should strike a balance in immigration policy between humaneness on the one hand and on the other hand the reality of protecting also the interests of your own country and your own people.
Second row here.
Sí, gracias. Soy Carlos Salinas del diario El País. Usted hablaba del tema de la importancia de la reconciliación y tomando en cuenta la experiencia que ha tenido usted y también con el presidente Mandela, me gustaría saber qué opciones ve en el caso de Venezuela, un país que tiene una profunda crisis política en la que de los dos grupos, tanto del oficialismo, del chavismo como de la oposición, no logran ponerse de acuerdo para encontrar una salida a esta crisis política que sufre este país sudamericano. Gracias.
In the case of Venezuela, I think it's a tragedy what is taking place there. I think it's fundamentally important that a solution should be found, taking our history into account. In the end, the biggest lesson we've learned is that if you want to avoid a catastrophe, if you want to avoid violence and people dying in political conflict, the only way out of that is to go and sit around a table and to negotiate and to have a real and meaningful dialogue. So the two leading schools in Venezuela need to do what the ANC and my national party did, and that is to enter into meaningful negotiations and try and find a formula. Usually, and also in the case of Venezuela, I think it's true. You will have to change the fundamentals. You have to address the root causes for the problem. I'm not an expert on Venezuela to identify all those root causes for you. In our case, the root cause was apartheid. was racial discrimination, was a minority dominating over a majority. That is not true of Venezuela. It's a different situation. But the leadership on all sides in Venezuela need to get around the table and without a lot of preconditions start and say we must save our country and all its people, and we need to change fundamentally. We need maybe to change, not maybe, I think definitely to change our constitution and to find a way forward which can realize the full potential of Venezuela, which has been destroyed by misrule.
Front row.
I think I'm next. I'll just ask my question. Mr. de Klerk, David Dickstein, Southern California News Group. My Spanish is pretty bad, so I apologize for having to ask my question in English.
I welcome it.
I'm joking, of course. Chiste. So, you've been to a few of these summits, and there's always a call to action, apparently, where you don't just, all of you are convening not just to discuss solutions, but to actually leave these summits with true solutions. In all your times here, are there any examples of where you felt you left and there was a solution actually created from the summit?
The problem of summits is that it usually results in a lot of wonderful, thought-provoking speeches, good ideas, good proposals, but the follow-through is very, very difficult. If you don't have power, you can't implement a solution. So in the end, the power of conferences like these is to change hearts and minds of people. And that is almost impossible to measure. So I can't give you a specific example where something we've done here or discussed here came up with a statement which offered a solution where it actually went fully into practice. No, I can't. But that is true of most conventions and most conferences. But I think, yes, we are playing a role in changing hearts and minds of many people who don't attend the conference, but who read what comes out of it, who follow podcasts on this, and who then are motivated to get onto the playing field, to influence their political decision makers, etc.
Hi, hello. I'm Fernando from Radio Aventureros. Good morning, Frederick and David. And Frederick, do you think there is still segregation in the South Africa schools, and what South Africa can do to change it or about it?
There is no longer segregation in South Africa schools. The old so-called white schools all now have people of color. But in the end, if you look at the composition of South Africa's population, more than 80% of all South Africans are black. So many schools just have black kids in areas which is mostly populated by blacks. But there is no longer any white school just with white children. The Constitution prescribes that education should be accessible to all, and that there may not be any discrimination in schools on the basis of race or color. What is important in education in South Africa is the Constitution also says that if it is practicable, you are allowed tuition in the language of your choice. We have 11 official languages. So there are some schools, the two most important languages from an educational point of view is English and Afrikaans, which is my mother tongue. And there are quite a number of Afrikaans schools, but also to those Afrikaans schools. It's not only white kids who go, it's kids of mixed origin, and even black kids goes to Afrikaans schools, although in the case of the black kids, Afrikaans is not their first language.
Okay, thank you very much.
Question over there, second row.
Hello, Mr. Klerk. Thanks for being here. I'll make the question in Spanish. Sudáfrica como México son dos países muy diversos en cuanto a sus culturas indígenas. Y ahora cabe mencionar las 11 lenguas oficiales de Sudáfrica. México tiene 68 lenguas y solo una oficial, me parece, que es el español. ¿Cuál es el proceso de cómo ve la situación de los pueblos indígenas en esta era y los retos ante megaproyectos y la occidentalización? La segunda va en torno a la educación y la participación de los pueblos indígenas dentro del sector educativo.
I firmly believe that all countries will become more multicultural with migration. And yes, I've taken note of how multicultural Mexico really is. I believe the solution lies in a system which allows indigenous groups to speak their language, to even be taught their language at school, to live their culture, and there should be tolerance in that regard. I think it's absolutely wrong to try to make everybody the same and to force people to relinquish a part of their identity. All of us have more than one identity. I'm an Afrikaner, I'm a South African, I'm an African, and I have a European background, but my people came to South Africa in 1689. I don't regard myself as a European, I regard myself as an African. But I have all these same identities at the same time. And likewise, your 35 groupings with different languages and different cultures have more than one identity. They are Mayan or whatever, and they are Mexicans, and they are from the Americas, and all of us are also, with a globalizing world, global citizens. And one shouldn't suppress the one side of your identity in order to let the other one be supreme. We should accommodate diversity and not try to root it out.
Second row here, green shirt.
Mr. Frederick, en este rincón del mundo conocemos del apartheid porque lo leímos, pero quisiera aprovechar su presencia para saber cómo fue vivir en apartheid, qué fue el apartheid.
To live under apartheid was different depending who you were. Apartheid benefited the whites, and it harmed the interests of the blacks. By the way, the blacks aren't just blacks. There are 9 indigenous nations, each with their own royalty and chiefs and languages and culture and history and historical places in parts of South Africa where they live, but that by the side. So apartheid was an unnatural situation in which a minority ruled over the majority. For many years, we tried to change that, but we couldn't really change it sufficiently until we accepted that apartheid was wrong. And I've reached that point, not in a sudden moment, in a sudden flash. It was a process for me and my fellow leaders. which really started in the late 70s. And by 1986, we admitted to ourselves apartheid is wrong. It has put us in a place which was morally indefensible. And because it was morally indefensible, we couldn't stay there, we had to change it. And that made us develop a new vision, whereas the vision of apartheid was to create a little Europe, a South African confederation with the Zulus governing themselves in Zululand, the Xhosas governing themselves in their own part of South Africa, the Sothos and the Vendas, and all 9 groups, and us governing ourselves in our own country. It didn't work out. We became economically totally integrated. The majority of blacks didn't want it that way. And the whites wanted too much land for themselves. For those reasons, separate development, as we prefer to call apartheid, failed. And we had to acknowledge that and say, no, we couldn't continue with something which is morally indefensible. We have to embrace a new vision of inclusivity, of saying there is one South Africa. All of us must share in that one South Africa. All forms of discrimination must be eliminated from the statute. We should all have the same equal right to vote. But we should have a strong constitution which would prevent that at any time in the future, again, any one group will dominate another group. That there shall be no discrimination again, and that important minorities should be accommodated in a meaningful way. And with that new vision, we went into the negotiations. And Mr. Mandela understood our position. And through a process of give and take, and we understood their position, we reached an agreement which is culminated in a very good constitution, one of the best in the world.
At the back. Microphone, please.
We're going to have to start wrapping this up. This is going to be the last question. I'm sorry, we have another press conference that's coming in right afterward. Disculpe la interrupción, tendremos que terminar esta rueda de prensa porque ya viene otra que va a venir dentro de poco. Gracias. Esa es la última pregunta.
Hola, ya. Solamente quiero preguntarle, don Frederick, anoche se reunieron ustedes con el presidente mexicano Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Él hizo referencia directamente a su persona, dijo que tenía sentimientos encontrados de poder compartir la cena, sentarse en la mesa con un personaje de la talla como usted. Y entonces mi pregunta es, bueno, ¿qué le provoca a usted esta referencia, esta alusión personal que hace el presidente mexicano? Y por otro lado, si lo considera a usted a él, un populista como lo han hecho ver algunas otras personas, por favor.
Firstly, I appreciated the recognition he gave to me, and I felt a bit guilty about all the other more deservable Nobel laureates whom he didn't mention. I couldn't communicate with him much because he doesn't speak English. And we didn't sit next to each other with a translator. The result is I did not have sufficient real communication with your president to give you an informed reply to your question.
Thank you very much.